The auction block's metal surface burned cold against Zara's feet. Her violet skin, marked with the bioluminescent patterns of her warrior caste, drew hungry stares from the assembled crowd. 3 weeks in captivity hadn't broken her spirit, but it had taught her patience. She watched, waited, and memorized faces, particularly those of her captors who thought a stun collar could tame a Kyrian war champion. The auctioneer, a corpulent Venturi with too many eyes, raised his appendages for silence. Our next lot, a rare specimen indeed. A Kyrian warrior, captured during the Outer Rim raids. Observe her conditioning, her obvious strength. Think of the possibilities, a guard, a gladiator, or perhaps. He let the implications hang in the stale air of the auction house. Zara kept her face impassive, though her secondary heart thundered with rage. Her people were born warriors, not slaves. Each bid felt like another insult to her heritage, to the sacred marks that spiraled across her skin in patterns that told the story of her victories. From the shadows at the back of the hall, a figure stepped forward. Human, male, wearing the weathered gear of a mercenary. His dark eyes met hers for just a moment, but something in that glance made her secondary heart skip. Not desire, like the others, but recognition. 50,000 credits. His voice cut through the murmurs of the crowd. The auctioneer's multiple eyes blinked rapidly. That's 3 times the current bid. Are you certain, sir? The human's hand moved to his credit chip. Perfectly. As the transaction was processed, Zara studied her buyer more carefully. His movements were too precise for a simple mercenary. The way he scanned the room spoke of military training. When he approached to take her chain, she noticed the subtle scars on his hands, combat marks, not the typical wear of a slave trader. My name is Nathan, he said quietly as he led her from the auction block. And we have about 3 minutes before they realize that credit chip is forged. Zara's bioluminescent markings flickered with surprise. You're either very brave or very foolish, human. A slight smile crossed his face. Let's find out which. Can you fight in that collar? I am Kyrian. I can fight in anything. She flexed her hands, feeling strength return to her muscles in anticipation. The first alarm blared just as they reached the exit. Nathan drew a pulse pistol from his jacket, while simultaneously producing a small device that he pressed against her collar. The locking mechanism sparked and fell away. Why? Zara demanded even as she fell into a fighting stance beside him. Because slavery is an abomination, he replied, firing at the first security drone that rounded the corner. And because your people aren't the only ones with warrior traditions. The next few minutes dissolved into chaos. Zara moved like liquid lightning, her natural combat abilities enhanced by weeks of pent-up rage. A guard rushed her with a stun baton. She caught his arm and used his own momentum to throw him into 2 of his companions. Nathan proved equally capable, his shots precise and his movement efficient as they fought their way toward the spaceport. My ship's in Bay 7, he called out between bursts of weapons fire. Assuming they haven't found it yet. Zara dropped another guard with a swift strike to his primary nerve cluster. And if they have? Then we steal one. I'm told Kyrians are excellent pilots. Despite herself, Zara felt her mouth curve into a fierce grin. Better than humans, certainly. They burst out onto the landing pad just as security ships began circling overhead. Nathan's vessel, a modified light freighter with obvious combat upgrades, sat at the far end. Between them and freedom stood a dozen armed guards and several combat drones. Any regrets about your rescue attempt? Zara asked, eyeing the opposition. Nathan checked his weapon charge. Ask me again in 10 minutes. Ready? Zara's markings pulsed with battle light, an ancient response of her people before combat. A Kyrian warrior is always ready. They moved as one, Nathan laying down covering fire while Zara charged forward, her enhanced strength and speed turning her into a blur of motion. Guards fell before they could track her movement. Combat drones exploded under Nathan's precise shots. Within moments, they cleared a path to the ship. The vessel's engines were already warming up as they reached it. Nathan must have remotely activated the startup sequence. As they sprinted up the boarding ramp, the first heavy security units appeared at the far end of the landing pad. "Can you handle those gun turrets?" Nathan asked as he rushed to the pilot's seat. "Point me at the enemy," Zara replied, sliding into the gunner's station. The controls were human-designed but intuitive enough. She opened fire as Nathan lifted off, her shots picking off pursuit vehicles before they could properly launch. The ship broke atmosphere under heavy fire, but Zara's gunnery kept their pursuers at bay long enough for Nathan to plot a jump course. Stars blurred into streaks of light, and the slave port vanished behind them. In the sudden quiet of hyperspace, Zara finally turned to face her rescuer. "You still haven't told me the real reason." Nathan's hands remained steady on the controls, but something in his expression shifted. "Because 6 months ago, I watched slavers take my sister. I've been hitting their operations ever since, gathering intel, looking for her. When I heard they'd captured a Kyrian warrior." He shrugged. "I thought having one of the galaxy's greatest warriors as an ally might improve my odds." Zara studied him for a long moment. Humans were known for their deception, but there was truth in his words, and pain in his eyes. "Your sister," she said finally. "What is her name?" "Terra. She's all the family I have left." Zara's markings pulsed softly as she made her decision. "Then we will find her, Nathan Gray. My people have a saying, honor calls to honor across the stars. You restored my freedom. I will help you restore your family." For the first time, a genuine smile crossed Nathan's face. "I was hoping you'd say that." Their ship sped through hyperspace, carrying them toward an uncertain future. But as Zara watched her unlikely rescuer plot their next move, she felt something she hadn't expected: hope. Perhaps there was more to humans than the stories told. The ship's engines hummed steadily as Nathan studied the navigational charts, his fingers tracing possible routes through contested space. Zara watched from her position by the weapon systems, her violet skin reflecting softly in the blue glow of the holographic display. 2 days of space travel had done little to ease the tension between them, though necessity had forged a fragile trust. "The Carina sector," Nathan said finally, marking a point on the map. "There's a resistance cell there that might have information about the slaver routes." "Might," Zara repeated, her bioluminescent markings pulsing with skepticism. "That's a long journey through dangerous territory for a possibility. Do you have a better suggestion?" Before she could respond, the ship's proximity alerts blared to life. Nathan's hands flew across the controls, bringing up tactical displays. 3 vessels had dropped out of hyperspace behind them, sleek, predatory craft bearing the unmistakable profile of slaver pursuit ships. "They found us faster than expected," Nathan muttered, already initiating evasive maneuvers. Zara slid into the gunner's seat, her warrior training taking over. "They're using quantum trackers. Primitive, but effective at close range." Her fingers danced across the weapon controls, bringing the ship's defense systems online. "We need to get beyond their tracking range." The pursuing ships opened fire, energy bolts streaking past their hull. Nathan's piloting kept them ahead of the worst barrages, but their pursuers were gaining. Zara returned fire, her shots precise but largely absorbed by the slavers' shields. "Their shields are too strong for these weapons," she called out, frustration evident in her voice. Nathan's expression hardened. "Then we changed the game." He yanked the controls hard, sending their ship into a spinning dive between 2 asteroid fragments. The pursuit ships followed, spreading out to cut off potential escape routes. "There's a debris field ahead," Nathan said, his eyes fixed on the sensors. "Dense enough to mess with their tracking systems, but it'll be dangerous." Zara's markings pulsed with grim amusement. "More dangerous than slavery." "Point taken." Their ship plunged into the debris field, massive chunks of ancient spacecraft and asteroid fragments creating a maze of deadly obstacles. Nathan's piloting became a dance of split-second decisions, weaving between jagged metal and stone while Zara's covering fire kept their pursuers at bay. One of the pursuit ships misjudged its approach, clipping a massive hull fragment. The collision sent it spinning into a larger piece of debris, resulting in a spectacular explosion. The remaining two ships became more cautious but didn't break off their pursuit. Their pilots are well trained, Zara observed, targeting a particularly persistent vessel. These aren't common slavers. No, Nathan agreed grimly. These are elite hunters. They must really want you back. Or they know who you are. Zara's shot finally penetrated one pursuer's weakened shields, destroying its primary weapon array. You've been disrupting their operations for months. That makes you a target too. A massive piece of debris suddenly loomed before them, too large to avoid. Instead of trying, Nathan accelerated directly toward it. Zara's markings flashed with alarm. What are you doing? Trust me. His hands were steady on the controls as they approached the enormous derelict. At the last possible moment, he fired the ship's emergency thrusters, using the debris field's microgravity to slingshot them around the obstacle. The maneuver threw off their pursuers' targeting systems and sent them hurtling through a narrow gap in the debris. The pursuing ships attempted to follow but weren't prepared for the gravitational forces. One clipped the edge of the gap, destroying its stabilizers. The last pursuer was forced to break off or risk the same fate. As they emerged from the debris field, Zara let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. That was impressive. Nathan allowed himself a small smile. My sister taught me that trick. She was always the better pilot. Zara studied him, noting the flash of pain that crossed his face at the mention of Terra. Tell me about her, she said quietly. Nathan was silent for a long moment, his hands absently adjusting their course. She's brilliant. Graduated top of her class at the academy. Could have had any posting she wanted, but she chose Frontier Patrol because she wanted to make a difference. His jaw tightened. That's what made her a target. She knew too much about the slavers' operations in that sector. And your attacks on their operations, they're not just about finding her, are they? No. Nathan's voice was hard. Every slave we free, every operation we disrupt, weakens their organization. Makes it harder for them to hurt anyone else's family. Zara's markings pulsed with understanding. My people have a saying, vengeance is blood, but justice is water, it gives life to many. Nathan glanced at her, surprised. I wouldn't have expected Kyrian philosophy to be so peaceful. We are warriors, Zara replied, but we understand the difference between fighting for destruction and fighting for something greater. She moved to stand beside him, looking out at the stars. Your sister sounds like a warrior too, in her own way. Yeah, she is. Nathan checked their current position. We should reach the Carina sector in about 12 hours, assuming no more pursuit. Zara nodded, returning to her station. I'll monitor the long-range scanners. And Nathan? He looked up. Thank you for telling me about her. Understanding your fight helps me trust your path. A comfortable silence fell between them as their ship continued through the void. Both knew that greater challenges lay ahead, but something had shifted in their relationship. Trust, like justice, could give life to many things, including hope. As Zara watched the stars streak past, she found herself wondering about Terra, this human warrior who fought with laws and knowledge instead of weapons. Perhaps there was more to learn about humans than she had imagined. And perhaps this unlikely alliance would prove to be exactly what both of them needed to achieve their goals. The Carina trading station loomed before them, a sprawling construct of interconnected modules and docking arms that sparkled like an artificial constellation. Nathan guided their ship toward one of the outer docking bays, away from the main traffic lanes. Keep your markings dimmed, he advised Zara as they prepared to disembark. The station's officially neutral, but credits can buy a lot of blind eyes. Zara adjusted the environmental suit she wore, designed to hide her distinctive violet skin. Your contact, you trust them? About as much as I trust anyone these days. Nathan checked his concealed weapons. But Jin's never sold me bad information. She runs the station's maintenance systems, sees everything that comes and goes. They made their way through the station's crowded corridors, blending with the diverse mix of species that called Karina home. Merchants hawked exotic wares from cramped stalls while dock workers hauled cargo between ships. The air was thick with the smell of different atmospheres mixing, 100 worlds worth of life compressed into metal hulls. Nathan led them down into the station's lower levels, where the pristine surfaces gave way to worn metal and exposed conduits. They passed through several security checkpoints, Nathan exchanging quiet words and credit chips with guards who seemed to know him. Finally, they reached a door marked, Environmental Controls. Nathan knocked in a specific pattern. After a moment, the door slid open to reveal a small, cluttered office. A woman with cybernetic augmentations covering half her face looked up from a bank of monitors. You've got nerve showing up here, Gray, Jean said, her cybernetic eye whirring as it focused on them. Especially with company. Good to see you too. Nathan closed the door behind them. We need information. You always do. Jin's organic eye flickered to Zara. Interesting choice of companion. The bounty on Kyrian warriors has tripled in the last week. Zara tensed, but Nathan stepped forward. That's not why we're here. We're tracking slave shipments, specifically ones from 6 months ago heading toward the core systems. Jin's expression shifted. The ones that took your sister. She tapped her metal fingers against her desk. You're not the only one asking questions about those shipments. Someone big is looking for her too. Who? Nathan's voice was sharp. Don't know. But they've got enough pull to make the slavers nervous. There's been a lot of movement lately, ships changing routes, bases being evacuated. Jean brought up a holographic display. 3 days ago, a high-security transport left the Helix facility. Heavily guarded, heading for coordinates in the Deep Reach. Zara stepped closer to the display. The Deep Reach is unmarked space. Perfect for hiding something, or someone. Or it's a trap, Jean warned. You're making waves, Gray. Big ones. The kind that get people killed. Nathan studied the coordinates. You have the transport's registry code? Better. Jean inserted a data chip into the display. I have their navigation logs. Sliced them from a drone that passed through here yesterday. She looked at Nathan seriously. But this isn't free. I need something in return. Name it. There's a shipment coming in tomorrow. Medical supplies, headed for the outer colonies. The slavers are planning to hit it. Jin's organic eye hardened. Those colonies are suffering enough without pirates stealing their medicine. Make sure the shipment gets through. Zara's markings pulsed beneath her suit. You want us to protect a medical transport. I want you to show the slavers that they don't own these lanes. Jean handed Nathan the data chip. Do that, and we're even. As they left Jin's office, Zara spoke quietly. She could have asked for anything. Credits, weapons, technology. Why a medical shipment? Because not everyone fights with weapons, Nathan replied, echoing their earlier conversation. Jean lost her family to a plague in the colonies. The slavers taking medical supplies, it's personal for her. They were almost back to the main corridors when Nathan suddenly pulled Zara into a side passage. Moments later, a patrol of station security passed by, led by a figure Zara recognized from the auction house. They're here already, she whispered once the patrol passed. How? Doesn't matter. We need to move. Nathan activated his comm unit. Jean, we've got company. Station security's been compromised. Already on it, Jin's voice crackled back. Taking their sensors offline in sections. Get to your ship. And Gray. Don't die. I hate losing useful contacts. They moved quickly but carefully through the station, using maintenance passages Jin had unlocked for them. Twice they had to detour to avoid patrols. As they approached their docking bay, alarms began blaring throughout the station. Warning, security breach in progress. All citizens report to designated safe zones. This is not a drill. Jin's buying us time, Nathan said as they sprinted toward their ship. But it won't last long. They rounded the final corner to find 3 armed figures waiting by their ship. Before Nathan could draw his weapon, Zara moved. Her environmental suit split at the seams as she launched herself forward, her natural combat abilities no longer constrained. The guards barely had time to react before she incapacitated them with precise strikes. Impressive, Nathan commented as they boarded. I told you, Kyrians can fight in anything. She took the gunner's position as Nathan started the launch sequence. The medical transport, we're still protecting it. You heard Jean. Those colonies need those supplies. The ship's engines roared to life. Besides, if we're heading into the deep reach, we could use some good karma. Station security tried to lock down their docking bay, but Jin's interference kept the doors open just long enough for them to escape. As they accelerated away from the station, Zara spotted multiple pursuit ships launching. Nathan. She highlighted a signal on his display. The medical transport. It's already in system. He studied the tactical display for a moment, then smiled grimly. Perfect timing. Ready to show these slavers why they should fear both humans and Kyrians. Zara's markings glowed with battlelight. Always. Their ship banked hard, heading toward the incoming medical transport. Behind them, the pursuit ships followed, unknowingly playing right into their hands. The real battle was about to begin, and this time, they weren't just fighting for themselves. For your sister, Zara said quietly as she prepared the weapons. For all of them, Nathan replied, and pushed the engines to full power. The medical transport loomed ahead, a bulky vessel never designed for combat. 6 slaver ships were closing in on it from different angles, their weapons already charged. Nathan's hands flew across the controls, plotting an intercept course. We're outnumbered, Zara observed from the gunner's station, her voice calm despite the odds. Then we'll have to be smarter. Nathan opened a channel to the medical transport. Karina medical vessel, this is Nathan Gray. We're here to help. Cut your engines and divert power to shields. There was a moment of static before a response came. This is Captain Reed. We've got 2,000 units of vital medicines aboard. We can't afford to lose this shipment. You won't, Nathan promised. Just trust us. The medical transport's engines dimmed as it followed Nathan's instructions. The slaver ships, sensing easy prey, accelerated toward it. They hadn't noticed Nathan and Zara's ship approaching from the station's shadow. Now, Nathan commanded. Zara opened fire, her first salvo catching the nearest slaver ship completely by surprise. Its shields collapsed under the precise attack, and the vessel spun away, trailing debris. The other slavers immediately changed course, splitting their attention between their original target and this new threat. They're coordinating, Zara reported, watching their movement patterns. These aren't independent pirates. This is a military operation. Nathan's jaw tightened. Which means they're after more than just medical supplies. He threw their ship into a series of evasive maneuvers as energy bolts filled the space around them. They're using this raid to test the station's defenses. A blast rocked their ship, but Zara's return fire drove back their attacker. 2 more slaver vessels moved to flank them, trying to pin them between crossfires. Nathan responded by diving beneath the medical transport, using its bulk as cover. Captain Reed, he called over the comm, when I give the signal, I need you to release your emergency plasma vents. Can you do that? Are you insane? Reed's voice crackled back. That'll leave us defenseless. Trust him, Zara cut in. Your ship will be safe. You have my word as a Kyrian warrior. There was a pause, then, very well. Ready on your mark. Nathan piloted their ship in a tight spiral around the medical transport, drawing the slavers closer. When 4 of the enemy vessels were in position, he gave the signal. Now. The medical transport's plasma vents erupted, releasing a cloud of superheated gas. Nathan had already calculated the explosion radius. Their ship shot through a narrow gap in the plasma cloud just as Zara fired into it. The reaction was spectacular. The plasma ignited, creating a shockwave that overwhelmed the nearby slavers' shields. 3 ships disabled, Zara reported with satisfaction. 2 still combat-capable. The remaining slavers pulled back, regrouping for another attack. But before they could, new signals appeared on the tactical display. Station security vessels were finally launching, moving to intercept. Looks like Jean came through, Nathan said, allowing himself a small smile. The slavers, realizing their raid had failed, turned and fled into hyperspace. As they escorted the medical transport back to Carina Station, Captain Reed's voice came over the comm again. We owe you our lives, and the lives of countless colonists who need these supplies. How can we repay you? Nathan exchanged a glance with Zara before responding. Actually, there might be something. We need transport to the deep reach, somewhere the slavers won't expect us to go. A medical transport would be perfect cover, Zara added. No one questions a mercy mission. There was a thoughtful pause from Reed. The colonies out there certainly need medical aid. It would be convenient if we had skilled escorts for such a dangerous journey. Then we have a deal. Report to Docking Bay 12 once we land. We'll discuss the details. As they approached the station, Zara turned to Nathan. The slavers will be expecting us to run. They won't anticipate us heading straight for their territory. Exactly. Nathan's expression was determined. And while they're chasing shadows, we'll find their hidden facility, and my sister. If she's as resourceful as you, she's still fighting. She is. Nathan's hands tightened on the controls. But every day we wait is another day they could move her. The Deep Reach facility is our best lead. Zara's markings pulsed thoughtfully. You know this is likely a trap. Probably. But sometimes the best way to spring a trap is to walk into it knowingly. He glanced at her. Having second thoughts? No. Her response was immediate. My people believe that the greatest honor lies in fighting for what is right, not what is easy. Your cause is just, Nathan Gray. And you have proved yourself a warrior worthy of trust. As they docked with the station, both knew they were committing themselves to an even more dangerous path. The Deep Reach was lawless space, where the normal rules of civilization held no sway. But they had something the slavers didn't expect, a human and a Kyrian working as one, each bringing their own strengths to the fight. Rest while you can, Nathan advised as they secured their ship. Once we begin this journey, there's no turning back. Zara's markings pulsed with fierce determination. Good. I prefer moving forward anyway. In the station's artificial twilight, they began their preparations. The true test of their partnership, and their mission, was about to begin. The medical transport emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the Deep Reach, its escort ship close beside it. Through the viewport, Nathan and Zara watched the star patterns change, becoming unfamiliar and wild. This far from civilized space, even the constellations told different stories. Multiple signals ahead, Captain Reed reported over the comm, looks like we've found your hidden facility. The station hung against the backdrop of a dying star, its architecture a twisted maze of metal and shadow. Surveillance drones patrolled its perimeter while defense platforms tracked their approach. This was no simple slave market, it was a fortress. "They're hailing us," Reed announced. "Requesting our purpose and cargo manifest." Nathan nodded to Zara, who had already taken position in their ship's concealed weapon bay. "Remember the plan. Let us do the talking." "Medical transport Mercy," responding to distress call, Reed transmitted. "We have vaccines and emergency supplies for the Outer Rim colonies." There was a long pause before the response came. "Transmit authorization codes and prepare for inspection." "Sending codes now." Reed's voice remained steady as she transmitted the forged documents Jean had provided. "Request permission to dock. We have temperature-sensitive materials aboard." Minutes stretched like hours as they waited. Finally, the station's docking bay doors began to open. "Permission granted. Follow designated flight path precisely." Their ships glided into the massive hangar, landing struts extending as they touched down. Armed guards approached immediately, their weapons trained on the medical transport. Nathan watched from their escort vessel as the inspection team began their work. "Stay ready," he murmured to Zara. "This is where it gets interesting." The inspection seemed to be going smoothly until one of the guards paused, checking his scanner twice. He spoke urgently into his comm unit, and suddenly alarms began blaring throughout the station. "Now!" Nathan commanded. Zara burst from their ship's hidden compartment, her warrior's speed taking the guards completely by surprise. At the same time, the medical transport's cargo doors exploded outward, revealing not medical supplies but a strike team of resistance fighters, former slaves who had joined their cause during their journey through the deep reach. The hangar erupted into chaos. Nathan sprinted from their ship, pulse rifle firing with surgical precision while Zara moved like living lightning through the enemy ranks. The resistance fighters spread out, securing the hangar with practiced efficiency. "Control room is 3 levels up," Nathan called out, consulting the station schematics they'd memorized. "Prisoner cells are in the lower levels." "Split up," Zara suggested, her markings pulsing with battle light. "I'll lead the team to the control room. You find Terra." Nathan hesitated for a split second, then nodded. They had come too far to doubt each other now. "Be careful. A Kyrian warrior is always careful." Her fierce grin belied her words as she gathered her team and moved toward the upper levels. Nathan led his group downward, fighting through security checkpoints and automated defenses. The resistance fighters proved their worth, their hatred for their former captors fueling their determination. Level by level, they pushed deeper into the station's bowels. In the control room, Zara and her team faced heavy resistance. The station's commanders had barricaded themselves in, activating military-grade defense systems. But they hadn't counted on facing a Kyrian warrior with human allies. While the resistance fighters drew fire, Zara used her enhanced abilities to reach the environmental controls. "Nathan," she called over their secure comm, "I'm shutting down their internal defenses. Be ready." In the prison level, Nathan's team had reached a heavy security door. As Zara's signal came through, the door's locks disengaged. They burst through to find rows of cells, each containing captured beings from dozens of species. "Terra!" Nathan called out, moving quickly down the rows. "Terra, are you here?" "Nathan?" A weak voice responded from one of the far cells. He ran toward it, his heart pounding. His sister looked thinner, harder, but her eyes still held their familiar fire. As he disabled the cell's energy field, she stumbled into his arms. "I knew you'd come," she whispered. "Always," he replied, holding her tight. "Can you walk?" Terra straightened, her jaw set with determination. "I can do better than that. I can fight." Above them, Zara's voice came over the comm again. "Nathan, we have control of their systems, but we've got incoming ships." "Lots of them." "Slavers?" he asked, already leading the freed prisoners toward the exit. "Worse. Looks like we found their military backup." There was a pause filled with weapons fire. We need to move. Now. On our way up. Nathan looked at Terra. Ready to meet a Kyrian warrior? His sister managed a grim smile. After everything you've done to find me? I think I owe her a thank you. They fought their way back to the hangar level, gathering more freed prisoners as they went. The resistance fighters formed a protective circle around them, their movements showing the training they'd received during the journey here. When they reached the hangar, they found Zara holding the entrance against a wave of reinforcements. Her markings blazed with battle light as she moved between opponents, each strike precise and devastating. The ships are ready, she called out as Nathan's group approached. But we've got capital ships incoming. We'll need a distraction to slip past their blockade. Terra stepped forward, her eyes bright with 6 months of stored vengeance. I can help with that. Show me to the weapon controls. As the freed prisoners boarded the ships, Terra worked with Zara to access the station's defense platforms. Nathan coordinated with the resistance fighters, preparing for their escape run. Ready, Terra announced. On your mark. Now. Nathan commanded. The station's defense platforms suddenly turned, firing on the approaching capital ships. In the confusion, their ships lifted off, accelerating hard toward the gap in the blockade. The medical transport's engines, modified for this moment, pushed it to speeds its designers never intended. They burst through the blockade, weapons blazing, and jumped to hyperspace before the capital ships could recover. In the safety of faster-than-light travel, Nathan finally allowed himself to breathe. Terra hugged him again, then turned to Zara. Thank you, she said simply. For helping my brother. For everything. Zara's markings pulsed softly. He helped free me first. We both fought for what was right. And we're not done, Nathan added, looking at the freed prisoners who had chosen to join their cause. There are more slaves to free, more chains to break. More warriors to unite, Zara agreed, her eyes meeting his with understanding. As their ship streaked through hyperspace, carrying their expanded family of fighters toward safety, Nathan reflected on how much had changed since that day at the slave auction. He had gone looking for his sister and found something more, a cause, a partner, and a reminder that the greatest battles were fought not alone, but together. So, Terra said, a familiar mischievous glint in her eye despite her ordeal, where are we heading next? Nathan looked at Zara, who nodded slightly. Wherever we're needed, he replied. There are still slaves to free, and now we have a proper crew to help free them. The stars streaked past, carrying them toward whatever challenges waited ahead. But they would face them together, human and Kyrian, brother and sister, warriors united in a cause greater than themselves. And somewhere in the darkness of space, the slavers trembled, for they had created something they never intended, an alliance that would bring their empire crashing down, one broken chain at a time.